So, the term web psychology fundamentally means, and how she breaks it down in the book, is the empirical study of how online environments influence our attitudes and behaviours. That's nothing particularly new, that's fairly standard practice, but what I'm going to explore in this presentation is kind of look at what she writes in the book and then extend the model further and how we can maybe use some of it as a company moving forward towards some of our clients. So, web psychology is made up of all of these different types of psychology. There's not just one overlaying kind of element here. So you've got HCI, which is human-computer interaction. You've got social psychology, which is how we relate to people. We've got neuroscience, which is how our brain reacts online. We've got neuroaesthetics, which is visual stimulation. Cognitive psychology, which is holding people's attention. Neuroaesthetics, which is visual stimulation as well. And behavioural economics, which is why we're rational when we're online. So all of these fundamentally come together and then effectively influence what we do and why we do it online. I kind of tended before reading this book just thought stuff's there. We design in a way, it looks good, it has an impact. But by kind of applying all of these, there's some really kind of cool stuff that's happening online that's making us do things that we're not aware of. So people like Amazon and eBay invest best part of £50 million a year into this type of research and understanding and how it impacts on what they build. So, there are three parts of your brain. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but effectively the overruling part is this thing called the triune brain, which is where you've got your neocortex, your limbic system, and your reptilian complex. So all of these act in different ways. And because of that, the brain, as we already know, is highly complex, it's a useful model, it understands hidden motivations, and because of that we can design persuasive experiences. So, the first one of those is what's known as the primal, which is common to all animals, be it human, be it dogs, cats, chickens. We all have these same fundamental elements. They're basic vital functions, and it puts us in an element. This is the part of the brain that's effectively balancing out what's risky versus what's safe. It's also your biggest driver towards sex, and also your biggest driver towards food. Albeit it's the smallest part of your brain, it is the one that needs to be kind of contained the most. It is the most dominant, the most aggressive part of your brain. So key primal principles are, and you'll see it in some of this advertising, so cues for sex. So it's why you see in lots of perfume advertising, women, men, Hollister use that a lot in their advertising. Motion, so cars, for example. You'll always see a car moving fundamentally in adverts because it's kind of setting off the primal triggers in your brain. Images of food and drink, it makes you kind of have a sense of warmth. You've then also got this thing that's known as the peak end rule. So for a hotel, for example, you can kind of give the impression, you can play on that primal instinct by giving them a glimpse of what they're going to get. Scarcity, we all fear, there's only one of something left, there's only two of something left. So a great way it's being used online at the moment is by kind of having a ticking clock, or ultimately saying there's only X amount left. And also contrast and concrete, so where you effectively polarize one thing against another. So all of these are key primal principles. The second part of your brain is what's known as the emotional part. So this is your limbic system, which is ancient and automatic. It kind of plays off what's known as amygdala, which is fear, relevance, and trust. Also, it plays on your thalamus, which is happy, sad, and disgusted, and your VTA, which is dopamine, risk, and reward. And I'll come on to more of that in a minute. Again, key emotional principles, no different to primal, is empathy, so mirroring. So you'll see a lot of advertising where what you're trying to do is understand who that person is and then show them the exact same thing. So if you're doing a piece of creative for trying to get to the East End of London, for example, with the old hipsters, what you do is effectively create something that represents and identifies them. Pleasure and pain. So a great example on this website is where you've got, new shoes are just the first step. So it's a company selling shoes, but it's fundamentally about how they're rewarding third world countries because of the pain and the misery that they're going through. Body language is absolutely massive in emotional principles. From videos to how you have photography. How somebody's body language is selling that advert is effectively what's driving it. It's not the copy, it's all in the image. Images of faces, again, another key principle. If you can't resonate and understand who that person is from that, then you don't tend to pick up on what the advertising is. And then last and by no means least, storytelling. So even kind of fundamental boring things, there's a clothes retailer here which is telling a story about a pair of corduroy trousers. You probably can't see in detail, but it's kind of showing the science behind it and why they're going to make a better impact on you as a human being. So all of these are simple things that are happening online that are dictating whether or not you're looking, searching, buying. And then finally, but not even least, is rational. So this is the one that's unique to us. You know, animals don't have this. It's a higher cognitive function. We plan, organise, problem solve. It's where our social learning and innovation takes place, and it's where our language and abstract thought takes place. This is the kind of bigger part of your brain as it shows, but actually it's quite lazy, and it's, you know, it quite happily just kind of tick along. It doesn't need, you know, much maintenance. And as I said before, it's that primal, the primal and the rational are effectively polar opposites of one another, and you need to keep both of them in check to make sure that you don't become a bit of a lunatic. And then looking at some key rational principles, what makes and influences our online behaviour. So we've got post-rationalisation, which is where kind of sending emails out to people after they've kind of made a purchase saying thank you. Product demos, if you can outline, you know, where your shoes are going to make an impact, what's going to have, you know, a better effect on you. Specs and benefits, so we see this all the time in websites where it's saying, look, you know, this is what you're going to get from it. Be the authority, so creating videos, you know, on YouTube, you saying that this is the way to do it. And most of all, for rational principles, evidence of working. So if you can show in an advert that this is having an impact on, you know, the audience that you're trying to seek, they're going to respond very well to it. So how this gets applied to video is quite, you know, clever effectively, is that those rational and emotional advertising, you know, strands need to come together and need to be in the video context. And then it'll take the user effectively from being completely unaware of your brand or product into brand awareness, consideration and advocacy, and then conversion. If you don't have those in equal element, then the video will tend to fail from the research that's been carried out in the book. So, what we need to remember is your brand is not what you sell, it's how you sell it. You know, there's plenty of brands that don't, you know, necessarily have the greatest product, but actually they position themselves in a way that they, you know, make themselves appear better than they are, and also they have advertising that allows them to effectively appear to be better. So, a good example of this is Candy Crush, where a case study was carried out. So another key psychological strategy Candy Crush is that you can play the game with just one hand, not had. Typo. Candy Crush clearly understand all the busy lives. In order to win our time, they're going to have to make it as easy as possible for us. So those of us who commute to work on public transport, it's a great opportunity for engagement. There's a strong potential to get bored in the commute and need entertaining. So that was one of their key fundamental things of research that they did, knowing that they could strike the primal part of the brain, saying how can you perform this in a way that's not going to effectively stress you out. And then secondly, what they did is you flick 4 candies in a row and they zap away, words pop up on your screen, along with a voice that says sweet or delicious. Bad impersonation. The feedback's actually absolutely essential for the player immersion. You know, according to the gaming addiction expert Kimberly Young, positive rewards are the main reason people become addicted to things, and it's because of this that you play Candy Crush. You feel better about yourself because it's delivering you that kind of happy sense of achievement that you've kind of moved forward. So what we can learn from that is understand exactly who your users are, what emotional satisfaction they're currently receiving, what's missing, where the opportunity is. Know the exact situations that your app is likely to be used in. Think of your own app use, why don't you use all the apps at the time, design the experience based around a specific use case, and optimise the core user actions that users perform within your apps to progress, etc. So, because of that, they then shifted it forward and they did some additional research to understand, you know, what are the 3 secrets to online success, and they get broken down into 3 key areas which, you know, as a planner and what I do are absolutely fundamental to a certain extent of my role, which is knowing who you're targeting, communicating persuasively, and then selling with integrity. So, knowing who you are is understanding about who the human, you know, what the human brain is and what it does. So, you know, the primal, the emotional, and rational, which we've just covered off. It's understanding, you know, what's the decision-making process that human's going on. It's then saying who's online and why. If you can understand who it is that you're trying to seek and why they're there, it allows you to then effectively tailor your campaign and your, you know, from everything we do, from an advert through to a social media post, you know, you're really starting to focus on what's going to get them to do it. Who are you targeting? You know, the more you know about that person, the more you can kind of connect to them on a one-to-one level. Some great work done by a guy called Geir Hofstede all around cultural quirks. So it's understanding why it might work in, say, Italy compared to America compared to Japan. There are cultural influences that will impact, which is why, for example, where you see a movie that's released, they will have pretty much their own poster sets for each of the areas that they're going into. That's not because, you know, they want to get creative, it's because they know that those, you know, the cuts of the trailer, the cuts, you know, the design on the poster is going to elicit a different emotional behaviour based on what they understand of that culture. And then individual pitch, so it's around gender, personality, and the 5 factors, which is some research which is kind of, you know, fairly standard in psychology practice, which is now being moved online, which is around, we all have these as human beings, our openness, our conscientious, our extroversion, our agreeableness, and our neuroticism. So it's understanding how each of those are going to impact on what you're creating and knowing who your audience is. The second of those is communicating persuasively, and it's mainly focused around Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Has anyone come across this before? Yeah, cool. So you'll know from that, effectively, all of these, fit in Maslow's hierarchy, and this is kind of offline stuff which is now being brought online. And about, we each have those in different levels, and it's then driving those through, and that sits concurrently with the advertising and the creative that's effectively made. So how we see that, persuaded online is things like, if you're on a website, you'll see padlocks or you'll see endorsements. It gives that person, when they come onto your web page, a sense of, knowing that, where they are is a trusted place, knowing that they're not in an isolated, website that nobody else is using. The images, so again, it's coming back to what we were looking at before, reflecting those that you see, if you can mirror what's actually taking place. Your videos, again, it's the body language in the video that's driving the emotional behaviour. And then interestingly, they did some research around colours. So they looked at websites that were predominantly red, and they looked at websites that were predominantly blue. And what they found is that red is a colour that elicits kind of arousal, so people get excited. They're quite prone to doing irrational things where you have a red website. Whereas blue, it's a lot more calming. Also, if you have a slow internet connection, you can actually make you feel like you're not waiting as long from a timing point of view, which is why you'll see a lot of banks and corporate blue chips tend to use blue as the predominant colour on their website. It's not, just because. It's because they're tapping into that, primal, emotional, and rational part of your brains. And then, lastly, by no means least, is around selling with integrity. So there's a guy called I can't remember his first name, Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion, which is around reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and conscious. So all of these are fundamental things that happen within your brain that are making you understand, and persuade you to do an action, whether or not you're offline or online. And interestingly, there's a company called WebPower that have taken this further with an API that allows you to tailor your website to each visitor based on the principles of persuasion, understanding what they're doing. It's a great example for it, that Safari, moving this through, you can now understand what type of web browser somebody's using, and based on that you can effectively create a persona, and it was viewed upon that if you're using Safari you've probably got less money, so you'd be given a different price than somebody using Chrome. Wow. Which is controversial. The problem is it got released out and leaked, and then people are really pissed off. But even your choice of browser is having an impact on your web experience. Again, all of this is subconscious, and you're none the wiser that it's ever taken place. So selling with integrity then gets broken down about building reputational capital. So it's that ratings, followers, reviewers that are so key in determining whether or not you buy something or not. Increasing your sales, so having bundles, having flexible pricing. As I say about the browser, airline websites do that a huge amount of the time. And then pricing value. So actually, there's a lot of kind of thought that's gone into it that more expensive actually is perceived as better value if you don't have the knowledge of that product or that industry. So if you're actually pushing a new product into a marketplace that you've never sold before to an audience you've never sold before, you can actually price your product considerably more expensive because you're giving them something that they were none the wiser around. And then this fits in around this element here called the behavioural game, which is by a guy called BJ Fogg, which is worth some kind of more time looking at, which I won't run into. It's around what's motivating us from high motivation to easy to do, and there's this kind of golden spot in the middle where you've got to have a desire to be motivated, but also you've got to make it able and easy to access to then fundamentally get that person to do what you want them to do. So, 3 golden rules of that are simple. Research audience. It is the fundamental, if you don't understand your audience and you're launching a campaign and you've not done the qualitative and you've not done the quantitative, then you're going to miss by whatever you do. You may get lucky, but the chances are you won't. Test it. We are now in an age in space where we can test things before they necessarily have to go live, and then analyse and evolve. And then effectively repeat and come back to the first. And this is the type of stuff that I really want us to be doing as an agency with clients in the Foundry, to kind of get them aware of who their brands are, what their brand is, what it represents, who their audience is, to make sure that when we're doing the work that we're doing, it's going to have the desired effect that they want. So the key takeaways very quickly is 2. To be persuasive online in e-commerce, marketing, customer engagement, you have to target all 3 systems of the brain. And that's breaking it down into your message and content and website always being effectively focusing on the primal, which is the arousing part, the emotional, which is the emotionally effective, and then the rational, which is the intellectually compelling. If you bring those three together in any type of marketing or any type of website that you create, fundamentally you are going to have a better success of getting that person to do what you want them to do. If you want to do some more reading, there is some really cool stuff that I really like. So this is the book that I was looking at in particular, but also there's a lot of this that rings true around the chimp paradox, about the three areas of the brain and what it does. So that's kind of from a personal point of view. So if you understand why you maybe overeat or you overdrink or the things that we all shouldn't do, Steve Peters kind of explores that on a one-to-one level. And there's also this new book which has just come out around brand psychology, and about how brands have changed and evolved based on the psychological understandings that we have today.